you'll have about the Memphis Grizzlies. We are here for it. I'm Chris Spags, joined, as always, by one of the smartest men in the world of NBA DFS analysis, Mr. Fast Eddie Fear. How are you doing, Eddie?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited. It's Friday. How can I ever complain about that? It's a nice spot, and it's also a great day, Eddie, because we are sponsored by Thrive Fantasy. And even though that is a common occurrence here, it always brightens my day whenever Thrive Fantasy pops into my life, because I don't have enough in my life of top DFS apps made of only top-tier athletes, where prop bets are the thing that you decide on to get ahead of the field. You pick 10 props out of 20, and the less probable a prop is to occur, the more points it's worth, and that's where the game theory comes in. So if you've been doing projections, anything like that, you'll know what to do for Thrive. So go click the link in the chat. They're giving $5 away to every Awesemo viewer, listener, reader, anybody out there. Just $5. All you have to do is sign up, use the promo code AwesemoLBL at that link I just put in the YouTube chat. You'll get $5 right away. Don't have to deposit. Don't have to do anything. So go check that out now. Support Thrive. Thrive's top prop, or at least the first prop that opens up when you open the app, is very relevant today. Jonas Valanciunas, Eddie, they're projecting for over-under 16.5 points. The over will get you 95. The under will get you 105. I've got him at 18.3, so I'm going over. But give me your thoughts on Jonas.
Yeah, I had him at 19.5 until the Noah news came out. Now I'm at 24.1. So, yeah, I'm going to sneak the over in there.
Just a little bit of favor on that over for you.
Barely going to get there for me. But, yeah, over for me.
So go check Thrive Fantasy out. Use that prop with Jonas Valanciunas in there. We are going over on him. And go win some money. Get $5 free even if you don't win. So go check it out. All right, Eddie, give me your thoughts on these Grizzlies. They are a team that a lot of people are talking about, a lot of debate about them. The deeper dive guys had some interesting points they raised about the validity of Delon Wright relative to Tyler Dorsey, who has at the minimum on DraftKings and not far from it everywhere else. What are you doing with these Grizzlies? Which guys are you comfortable with? Which guys are you not so comfortable with?
Right. So, where to begin? There's a lot to talk about with the Grizzlies here today. So, someone sent a tweet a little while ago reminding me of a day where 4 Grizzlies was required in all contests in a much better matchup and a similarly understaffed team. I am far less bullish about this Grizzlies team than I was about that one. With the news that Noah is unlikely to play, I am absolutely in love with Jonas Valanciunas. At the end of building the DK lineup I futz around with every day, I had $7,000 left over for the utility spot. And I sat there and I looked at it for quite some time because there were a number of guys in that range I really wanted to get access to. Now, I already had my exposure to Pascal Siakam, thankfully. It is worth pointing that out, but he at 7,200 still probably would be my favorite in that sort of 65 to 72 tier. But with the news that Noah was unlikely to play, I ended up leaving the $400 on the table and cramming in Jonas Valanciunas. But it's an interesting spot where I like Kuzma at 6,500 quite a bit in this matchup with reduced LeBron. I think there's a lot of upside there. I'm a pretty big fan of Kuzma today. I don't mind Lou Williams or Montrezl Harrell against Cleveland at those prices. Chris Paul at 6,900 is just objectively way the hell too cheap and carries a lot of an upside. Don't have Jokic in this lineup, so I like the hedge to Millsap. And I'm a pretty big Danilo Gallinari fan today. I have him projected for just a hair short of 40. He has not failed to get 35, or I should be more specific, 34.75 fantasy points on DraftKings in 8 games. That's a long time in a row to have a floor of 35. Now, this game can blow out. The Cavs are terrible, but he's a guy who does a little bit of everything. It's a spot where he gets a couple more rebounds, where he gets a couple more open threes. I'm a pretty big Gallo fan in this spot, so that was a possibility for me. So I'm looking at the spot, and Gallo makes sense. Millsap makes sense. Paul makes sense. And Valanciunas already had a lot of appeal for, because Valanciunas in that last game, they gave 36 minutes to, which, anyone who loves Valanciunas is something we've been crying for a long time. He looked brilliant. He had 50, and that's not that much more than you would expect him to get in a vacuum in 36 minutes. I didn't think he would stay that high. I had him at 29 walking into the day, and there were downsides below that. He, foul trouble, Noah playing well, other guys being there, but with, last game, them taking Rob out of the rotation, though I'm sure he's back today, Now with Noah unlikely to play, center's a bit of a goddamn mess there. I have him at 32 right now, and I'm not shocked if you see 36 again, and I just can't get away from that. Matchup with Vooch is not a good one. Vooch is above average at defending him. They've played each other twice this year, a couple times ago on these teams, and then previously in the year, he started a game against Orlando when he was with Toronto. And have played each other a lot, and I've looked at it quite a bit. It's not something I would call a good matchup, but I have his projection now into the mid-40s, and I can't get away from that at 66, and he's going back and forth with Jokic and a couple other guys as my favorite center of the day on FanDuel at 77. So I'm a huge JVal fan. Outside of that, and we will talk about Dorsey, and we will talk about Delon Wright. It is worth pointing out that this is a dreadful goddamn matchup, and they have whatever it is, 10 or 11 guys there today. I'm not at all shocked to see, outside of Delon Wright and Jonas Valanciunas, nobody else play 30. I might prescribe that as the most likely scenario. I'm not. I currently have Dorsey projected for 30. I'm not shocked if some of that time gets ceded to Javon Carter, because the balance of players they have now tilts a little bigger. I'm not sure some of that time doesn't come in and he doesn't get backed up by Justin Holiday, who slides up to the 2 so that they can run, let's say, Caboclo next to Rob at the 3 and the 4. There's just a lot of ways this shit goes sideways. You're in Orlando. They're significantly favored. They are a much, much better team. You got a few of the kids up from the G League, where you have Watanabe and Javon Carter, who can back up the 1 and the 2, and actually started games for this team earlier this year. So I like Delon Wright quite a bit. It's going to be at ownership, and we'll talk about that in a minute. I haven't peeked at that yet. I like Jonas Valanciunas quite a bit. I like Tyler Dorsey, I suppose, quite a bit as a raw points play. 3K is 3K, and he's not brilliant, and the matchup is shit, but even if you project him at, say, 0.7 points per minute, in 30 minutes, that's 21 on DK, which for 3K certainly is not killing you. And he's a guy who can make some three-pointers, so there is ceiling beyond that, where maybe you mize a 30 for 3,000. Maybe that comes out for you. And FanDuel, he's only 3,700, and you can drop him. So I'm not going to have any issue with any amount of Tyler Dorsey in your lineups, but I kind of like him more on DK, where he's just so damn cheap, and there's really no one else in the threes I'm super excited about. You can Hazonia at 3.9, but even that's $900 more. That's relevant. FanDuel, I'm more inclined to get away in tournaments. He's going to be A, super popular, and B, there's just a lot of guys who I can see much more easily getting to some sort of ceiling at shooting guard than him, where it's Monty Morris in the event that game blows out, which is not impossible, and he runs the second unit for the entire fourth quarter and plays 26 minutes, and, Jamal Murray only plays about that amount. Whether it's Danny Green, who just 2 days ago had an excellent game in this matchup, whether there's just a lot of other places I would rather go than 40% owned guy in really, really difficult, I would rather play Justin Holiday, because I have Tyler Dorsey projected for actually 1 less minute, but 2 more fantasy points. Actually, like 5 more fantasy points, actually. But the point is, the ownership is, I have a feeling, something like 40% to 4%. So, outside of that, I like Rob on FanDuel at 3,700 with the news Noah isn't out. He's going to have to get some time. I have him at 23 minutes right now. I'm not super confident in that. You can Caboclo, but the price is not, as close to the minimum as I would like it to be. But 40 minutes last game for him is a really relevant figure to look at. And again, at ownership versus Dorsey, absolutely fine if that's where you put down your spoon. I mentioned Holiday, who, again, last game, he has just fallen off the map as being part of this team. I think in the last game he played 22 minutes or something and took a shot, which he missed. And that's all he does. So, when you're Justin Holiday and you take a field goal in 20 minutes, wow, are you not doing anything of value? You can Chandler Parsons again, that's worth mentioning. But I again, really want to stress, this is not a good matchup. And I think the more likely outcome is that a lot of these guys are minutes limited. So this is not like the Grizzlies scenario to which the earlier tweeter alluded, where they had, I believe, 7 guys on the day in question. There may have been 8. They have 10 here, and 240 divided by 10 is 24. A lot of guys are going to end up around that damn number. So, in general on the team, definitely a slow your roll spot for me. That said, big fan of Valanciunas and Delon Wright.
I think that seems fair, and we did just get a starting lineup in, which it consists of, I think, what would be expected.
Let me guess. Here we go. Let's go with Wright. I'm gonna go with. This is a tough one. I'm gonna go with Wright, Dorsey, Holiday, Rob Valanciunas.
Caboclo Valanciunas.
All right, yeah, that was the other one. I thought they might pull him off the bench today, but was probably
they
more
played
likely.
Caboclo 40 minutes the other day. Is there a chance of that happening again?
Absolutely. They gave him 40 minutes with more guys there.
Yeah.
So a couple other things I want to talk about. I think Orlando on the other side of the ball is being undersold in this game. People go, God, Orlando versus Memphis. None of these guys outside of Vooch spike a really big ceiling. So there's very little ownership on Augustine, Fournier, Ross, Isaac, Gordon. Too little. I'm not saying I love all these guys, but I'll pretty much guarantee at least one of those guys is good. This is not a good spot for Vooch. Val does a very good job against him. He's a good rebounder, which limits his fantasy production a little bit. And this is a Memphis team that has been giving up way more points. You look at their last 3 games. When they played Orlando was the last time they didn't really get sort of bitch slapped defensively. They played Orlando, and that was a low-scoring game. They've played 3 games since then and given up, 115, 120 points in all 3 of those games, getting whooped around pretty solid. And now you're removing Avery Bradley and Mike Conley and replacing them with guys who are A, going to move faster, and B, defend a hell of a lot worse. So that's my other comment there. I don't have a strong... I think maybe Augustine at this point would be my favorite of them. But I do think they're all a little bit under-owned. Obviously, all their prices have come up a little bit. Augustine's most noticeably, so he's in the mid-5s alongside Ross and alongside Fournier. Isaac is always very inconsistent and bases defensive stats on so much of his production. Gordon, the number has really come up. So I don't love any of them, but I do think they're all better than they're being sold, because this is not a Memphis defense that I'm that worried about, and I think the pace is more significant than people are making it out to be. So a lot of these guys rank as, double Bs in my rankings as opposed to CBs or CCs or something of that nature.
Speaking of your rankings, the people asking, I don't know if there was an issue with uploading, but they're asking if they're going up.
I was readjusting for Memphis. They'll be up in, I need about 45 seconds. So if you talk for 45 seconds, they'll be up in 1 minute.
Yeah. So for the Grizzlies, I'm with you on the Tyler Dorsey issue. Like, I think he's a viable play, and we talked about it before we came on the air, just because I was curious what you were thinking, because the Deeper Dive guys made some good points about it, where he's at the stone minimum, and he can have an upside here, but the matchup is bad, and I agree with you. I feel like Delon Wright's just a little more secure. I'm not dying to have 40% of him either, but I think it's a spot where you trust him a little bit more. Dorsey, this is not fair to hold him to the standard, but he has bombed pretty bad as a chalk play for Atlanta before. I don't know that I need to go there for a guy who's just a 0.77 per minute guy. He's okay, but for a tournament, I just feel like you're going to need more upside. Even on a slate like this, where it is kind of ugly in a lot of games, I think you're going to need a little more upside to hit there.
Yeah, it's again just the matchup is fugly. So it's funny because usually when you're looking at more specious plays, I'm usually a little more excited to play them on FanDuel than DraftKings. Like, if you're like, I'm going to play, Mario Hezonja, God, am I more interested in playing a guy that I have a lot of insecurity and concern about there, usually on FanDuel and DraftKings. But today I would honestly flip that, because he is prohibitively, or not prohibitively expensive on DraftKings. He is incredibly cheap relative to most of the other guys in value plays, making his, mid-range perfectly tolerable, and you can win a GPP with 25 out of him, which certainly is not impossible. FanDuel at shooting guard, he's 3,700. There's just in and around that price. If you go up to anywhere near, say, 42, 43, there's like 6 guys I like more, and there I am hunting upside. So when I expect Valanciunas to be usage dominant, followed by Wright, and he's going to fight for 3rd place with other guys, I on FanDuel would rather pivot away, which is which is a weird but true thing for me. So you gotta keep your head on a swivel when you get in a vicious DFS cockfight.
I won't follow that up with any statement, but I will move to another game, which I do want to hear your thoughts on. It is the game with the highest total, 230.5 point combined total. A guy who I've talked about a lot today in my Four Corners video in the column, and a lot of people have talked about industry-wide. But the ownership, at least in our projections right now at Osmo.com, and you can play along with them with promo code LiveBeforeLock, get half off your first month on ownership projections and all the other content we have. Osmo's rankings, Eddie's rankings, which will be up right now, a bunch of other stuff. D'Angelo Russell, to me, like, he's not a lock. I don't think you can lock D'Angelo Russell ever. He's had over 25 shots in his last 3 games. It seems like he's finally got the role. It seemed like he should have had all year, but he's been browbeaten and dragged in and out of the rotation or out of the lineups by Kenny Atkinson. This is a perfect spot for him, it seems like. So I'm going to have more than 27% of him. I know that. It's really risky feeling, though, because he just has bombed his chalk before. So, Eddie, where do you fall on the D'Angelo Russell debate?
Rank should be up. First, I want to say that there is a difference between being unable to quantify a thing and say that it doesn't exist. So, and the reason I bring this up is I hear people say, like, I don't think revenge is a thing. Revenge is a thing. I'm going to let you know that there is and I can't believe, it's like someone in baseball who says, BVP is not a thing, it doesn't exist. It exists. It's a shitty stat in baseball because it is difficult to quantify and very difficult to separate from large amounts of noise. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It absolutely positively exists. There are guys who do better or worse against certain pitchers for certain reasons that are not otherwise statistically represented. Like, say, pitch angle or various other things where there's guys who just hit 3/4 pitchers better than over-the-top pitchers, and that isn't represented still. Whatever. Same thing with revenge. Just because you can't quantify it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I put it in the same, like, saying I don't care about revenge is the same for me as saying I don't ever account for blowouts because I can't predict them. That doesn't mean they don't exist. I guarantee you, if you take a cross-section of teams that are in toss-up, no-line, pick-em contest versus teams with 15-point lines, 15-point favorites, that the teams in the pick'em game average more minutes for the starters over time. Absolutely. I'd bet my life. I don't know if it's 2 minutes or 4. I don't know what percentage of the time they see less minutes. But there is a real thing there that is difficult to measure and quantify. But I think ignoring it because it is difficult to measure is ridiculous, and it's the same thing with revenge. Now, that doesn't mean that, it doesn't mean that, blowouts, that it is something that probably can be apportioned to some degree every single time. I think revenge is irrelevant for some people. I think revenge is negative for some people. I think it's all sorts of stuff. But D. Russ sticks it in the Lakers pretty regular, talking to reporters, talking to whatever. I don't think, and I can't believe any intelligent person makes this argument, that it does not matter, that it does not change anything, that he does not play in some way differently in this game than in a vacuum against an otherwise identical team for which he did not play and has no animus towards. I'm not saying I think it's a massive thing. I'm not saying you should play him more because of revenge. I'm not saying it's positive. I'm just saying I think it's ridiculous to be like, oh no, it is, so just because you cannot quantify a thing does not mean that thing does not exist. I am revenge agnostic. I am not revenge atheist.
Let me just jump in 1 second about this, because I actually argued with a guy on Twitter about this, because in the headline for my column today, The Switch and Hedge, it had the word revenge, but it's more talking about his hot streak, the fact he's shooting 25 times a game. He's had a 40% plus usage rate in a couple of the most recent games. Like, he's rounding into form, and the fact that he's a lead ball handler, and there is revenge there. Like, I don't think it's a data point to mention, but I think if you don't mention it, like, people are reading that, like, why aren't you mentioning this pretty obvious thing? So I just think there's a weird relationship with revenge narratives, and people get really butthurt about it.
I will happily state, for the record, with no reservation, the best thing to do is to ignore it. I just want to make that clear. But I'm saying there's a difference between not accounting for it and saying it does not exist. This purely heuristic intellectual argument I'm having here. But there are people who literally say, revenge doesn't exist. I'm like, well, that's just stupid. It clearly exists. Like, I have played basketball a couple thousand hours in my life, and I have played pickup games at the gym, and I have played pickup games at the gym against that guy who I got in a fist fight with the parking lot last year. I play that second game a little differently. Mm-hmm. I either avoid the guy or anyhow. Moving on. So
it's not like the point too is it's not like it's a terrible matchup. It's a matchup versus a team who's paced up and has terrible.
So setting it aside, that was completely irrespective and irrelevant related to my Nets analysis, which would be, I think Spencer Dinwiddie is an exceptional play on FanDuel and passable on DK as obvious leverage against a highly owned Russ. Russ is obviously has a brilliant upside, which he's expressed many times. He is not priced out at 89 and 83. The matchup is obviously extremely superlative for him. The Nets are on a back-to-back, which always gives me a ton of pause looking at them. The number of factors I worried, I'll speak for myself, would limit his performance are less than I thought, where he's gotten the run over Dinwiddie more frequently than not, and LeVert simply isn't a threat to be an additional detraction from what he can do. So the team needs to win the game. So there's all kinds of, this is one of the few cake games the Nets have left. They have a brutal schedule for the last 8 or 9.
Also, whoever's on the Awesemo.com handle right now also brings up a point that the Nets can officially eliminate the Lakers from playoff contention tonight. Angelo Russell knows this.
That is well more bullshit than revenge. Like someone's like, oh, it's super revenge. He can knock them out of the playoffs. They're out of the playoffs. For them to make the playoffs, they need to win every game, and other things have to happen. Like, they're out of the playoffs. But yes, they can be staked through the heart tonight, which is cute for narrative if you're going there. But so matchup obviously superlative, but a fully healthy Nets team is a thing of concern. Like normally the centers is a spot I really want to take a shot at, and if you want to run Ed Davis at 38 on FanDuel, that's fine. 36, whatever the price is on DK, that's fine. Jared Allen obviously has an upside he can achieve here. But we became, used to them sharing 48 minutes, and that is simply no longer the case. I think, I did not have time to check this, so I will look, but I do not believe they collectively got anywhere near 48 minutes in the last goddamn game. Jared Allen in the last game played 21 minutes. Ed Davis played
18?
13.
Ooh.
Those add up to 34. Did that in my head. You like that? So, a little bit of concern there, especially if this game goes small, which I certainly think is a very, very, I don't know about likelihood. I will go with likelihood. I think a greater than 50% chance that, you have Kuzma on the floor for center more than JaVale McGee here, or it's a very real possibility, let's put it that way. So, yeah. All that together, that puts, some concern. And I should point out, that was not a foul trouble issue. That was a close game. That was the game they won in the fourth quarter. Now, I think most of the time they do share 48 minutes. That was where in the fourth quarter they were running that weird-ass lineup, and D'Angelo Russell went Super Saiyan mode, and they had all the randoms out there. Dudley was out there. I don't even remember what it was. But so I think it's likely that they probably do play 48 minutes here, but it's not impossible that one of them loses minutes, and I should point that out because otherwise in a vacuum, if I'm 100% sure those two guys share 48 minutes, they look pretty sweet. Like, for their ownership especially, which I haven't looked at, but I haven't heard them mention much, so I'm just intuiting it. Against the Lakers, that's a pretty good spot for Jared Allen at 5,500 and Ed Davis at 36, 38. So there is some concern there for me, which makes them both still, for me, very strong tournament plays. The existence of Mitch Robinson at his price on DraftKings also does throw some water on that as well, because that is a stupid cheap price where you're getting similar to Jared Allen production, obviously with questionable minutes, but at a really, really cheap price tag. 4,300 is kind of sexy.
What about, so that you talked about the bigs on the Nets side, getting a question from Moses Guthrie in the premium Slack. Thoughts on JaVale McGee?
Yeah, I do want to mention of the other members of the Nets, I do think some of these guys are decent. Currently, I have them barely Carroll, LeVert, Harris as the next three guys I'd like to throw my spoon at. Price is up a little bit on Kurucs. He would probably come in fourth. Makes some sense on FanDuel. Hasn't been that great, but I think that's how I'd rank those other guys, and I think they're all just fine to play in GPPs against the Lakers. Where we're to go with JaVale McGee, I think is a compelling tournament play. I have a strong. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say he'll play between 10 and 38 minutes, and then, I don't know exactly what they're going to do. These, I think they like to run small, and this is a team against which they can do it a little more easily, not running, very big at the 4 a lot of the time. So I'm a little bit disinclined to JaVale. The matchup is incredible. So you're just guessing on the minutes. There's other center plays I like a lot, and I'm more inclined to think this shit goes small and you get more of that 19 minutes out of JaVale bullshit. So for that reason, there's other guys I'd go to first. But, in 19 minutes, you can get 30, and certainly could get the 30-minute game if Jared Allen is going off or whatever the hell. So conflicted on JaVale McGee. Obviously, I think there is a very big upside center against the Nets. That's not great analysis or anything, but I do think it is a game in which they are a little more likely to run small, and that brings me some concern.
Any interest in the other Lakers here? We got Rondo Kuzma, who had one pretty good day versus the Brooklyn Nets earlier this year.
I like Kuzma a lot. I really like Kuzma a lot. Again, I think they end up running small. I think he spends a lot of time at center. I think you get towards the top of his minutes range. I think it's a great spot. I presume minutes on LeBron stay to some degree limited. The absence of Josh Hart trickles down minutes everywhere so that I like everyone a little bit more, as crazy as that sounds. But I like, probably in order of the others would be probably on Kuzma, then Rondo, then, setting aside LeBron for a minute. I'm probably on Kuzma, then Rondo, then Kentavious Caldwell-Pope.
Probably not another 50 fantasy point day for him today, though.
I will take the under. But it's a very good spot.
Just by a hair.
But yeah, I will.
On Thrive Fantasy, take the under.
I will. Yeah, Thrive Fantasy. If the over/under DK points for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is 50, I'm taking the under, especially if I get paid more.
Yeah, I'm with you on it. Yeah, I think he looked great in that spot. I think he's playing for a contract, but that was definitely a Milwaukee Bucks situation where they were giving him the looks for whatever reason in that spot, and they'll always give somebody the looks. They're such an interesting team. I can't wait to see them in the playoffs.
Hard out too, though, is very, very relevant for projecting KCP.
Yes. All right, let's do a little halftime daddy likes before we move on to some of the other games on your other notes. Got the top 5 guys here. They're going to probably not surprise you too much, but number 1 on the list, Tyler Dorsey on DraftKings, obviously the minimum price, 56% ownership. How does Daddy feel about that?
56 is too much. There are a lot of guys at very reasonable price tags who I'm a pretty big fan of. 56 is probably too much. I'd have been on board with 40, 45. When you're getting to 56, I'm now, while I think it's pretty unlikely, working on the odds that he ends up with like 12 fantasy points. Like, it's like, okay, now there's just a real chance that he just, knocks a leg out of half the damn field where, he only plays 26 minutes because it's a massive blowout and scores 14 fantasy points. I don't think that's incredibly likely. But when you get up to 56, and again, I think the upside is capped, I'd be wanting to get away a little bit. So I will go with dislike there. I would have nominally less, 45, I imagine.
And we also got an update actually while we started this, and he's down to 50%, so much more reasonable there.
Yeah, that's about where it should be. He is the premier price saver on the slate. He really is. I need to look at the rest of that team. You have Chandler Parsons at 34 if you can go to that position. That's not entirely out of play for me. You have Malik Beasley at 3,400. I think he's on the court in the event of a blowout there, which really would not shock me. The Knicks are bad. You have Rob at 36. You have Caboclo at 36. You still have James Johnson, who's been playing a lot. And I expect to get a lot of minutes because Giannis is there. A lot of minutes is James Johnson standard. So I'm talking about 26, I think I ended up with him projected at. But he's 3,600. Ed Davis is 3,600. So, none of them, nothing down towards 3,000 looks that delicious. But, I would come in under 56 and under 50 as well by a little bit.
All right, number 2 on the list, we have Delon Wright, Tyler Dorsey's backcourt mate for the day, 42% expected ownership. How does Daddy feel about that one?
That I have, I have him projected just a little bit worse than Van Vliet, but the savings makes him a slightly better play. That's, again, about the number. I will hesitantly say I like it, but I would be, a little under on Dorsey and about there on Delon Wright.
Okay, number 3 on the list, we have Jonas Valanciunas, your man, 38%. What would you do with that one?
Be upset that it's not lower. Yeah, with the news that Noah is unlikely to play.
He's actually officially out, by the way, since we started the show.
Oh, is he? Very nice.
Yep.
So now you're at, it's hard to project him under like 32 minutes, and 34, 6, 8 become real possibilities, and the rest of the team are giant usage vacuums of Holiday and Caboclo and Rob, and it's just, I'm going to be over that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. You've convinced me more. I was pretty there on him, but I think I'm going to go pretty heavy on Jonas now that our conversation has led us there. Number 4 on the list, Fred VanVleet, 29%. How does Daddy feel about that?
What's his price? 54?
53.
53.
He's been above 36 in the 2 starts that he's had, I believe, offhand.
Yeah, I mean, he's had well more starts than that if you go back to earlier this year. I mean, we have a bigger...
Well, I mean, I think he's looked better since he came back for whatever reason. Maybe it's just the health and healing up and all that, but he's been looking like solid in a way where I feel like before he kind of felt iffy when he was getting those minutes, and I don't know. He's looked a little better to me, a little sharper.
I haven't noticed a difference, but it certainly doesn't mean it's there. I missed stuff. Yeah, I imagine I'd be slightly over that as well. Like, both he and Wright just project very well for a points per dollar sense for me. I have a feeling I'd be, I actually think I'd be a little bit under there. That's very close. It's a very reasonably accurate line. It's about where it should be. There's no giant advantage there, so matching the field in that 25 to 30% range makes plenty of sense for me. It is a really nice pace-up matchup. I don't think he does quite as well as he does last game. I'm projected for, again, closer to 30 fantasy points, but that still prices out pretty well. So I'm pretty thoroughly ambivalent on that.
All right, and number 5 on the list, we have Derrick Jones Jr. picking up 29% ownership. How does Daddy feel about that one?
Yeah, I forgot him when I went through my list of other value dudes. He's 3,300. I'd come in under that. I like Derrick Jones Jr. plenty. That is not a matchup that is conducive to a lot of fantasy production. He's a guy who, if I play, I want to play on FanDuel so that I can get 3 per steal, which is usually the way that he is going to spike those super upsides. Adebayo is in, so it's not like I'm dealing with 6 guys out. You're really just dealing with Winslow absent. So yeah, I would be pretty well under that. Like, I like him a lot as a player, but I have him at 26 minutes and 19 fantasy points or something. It's that game is really tough to take anything out of. I don't mind playing Giannis at this point, but this they've played several times this year. The third time was the first time Giannis has had a good game against the Heat in 10, 11, 12 career games. I'd have to look it up, but they've done a very, very good job against him, and they have a lot of guys between Jay Rich and James Johnson, and just have a number of guys they can put in front of him who do a pretty decent job of guarding him, and they really focus on him, and the games tend to be slow and really not that productive. So last time out, he had a really good game. He had like 70 to 75. He was in the low 70s, I think. And, I think that's very possible again today. So I have him behind Harden by a decent amount, who I have behind Westbrook by a hair at price. I have James Harden for 2 more fantasy points than Russell Westbrook, which makes Russell Westbrook better on both sites a little bit for me. I'm just extrapolating now, moving from game to game. We started talking about Derrick Jones Jr. as number 5 on that list, and that got me to the Heat, which got me to James Johnson, which got me to Giannis, which got me to
your
Harden,
beautiful mind on full display.
Which got me to. I'm just talking about stuff I think people might find interesting. I can see this being incredibly useful or incredibly annoying to people. The analysis of this game, not speaking of Oklahoma City now in Toronto, not that different than it was on Wednesday, where it went pretty well. I loved Pascal. I loved Kawhi, who was a little disappointing. I said I love Westbrook when he was stupid more underpriced. He was 10-3 on Wednesday, I think. Now he's 10-8. I didn't like Paul George. All that worked out. It's basically the same thing today. Pascal Siakam on TK is just underpriced. FanDuel is a little bit underpriced, but still a great spot for him. I don't think you get 60 whatever today, but I have him projected closer to 50 than 40, 7,200 on DK. He's a stellar play who I think you would want to have some exposure to. I think my computer's about to blow up. Yep.
Not ideal. We need you.
That's my day job checking in. So I'm going to be hurrying off the phone quite possibly in 21 minutes, but they can wait 20 minutes. They'll survive. So yeah, analysis of that game about the same. VanVleet absolutely fine at his price. When he's super popular, a guy I try to look elsewhere because not a guy who's going to spike a massive upside for you, but still like Kawhi, still love Pascal, still like Russ more than Paul George, still like, everybody's prices come up except for Paul George, who's kind of junky in that game, so that makes some sense. Still prefer Kawhi at 89 to Paul George, not by as much as when he was 84. Paul George not by any means out of play, but Kawhi for many years, and again, previous to 2 days ago, they hadn't played since 2017, but in everything I had seen, does a very good job against Paul George. So, yeah, all that collectively, same analysis as a couple days ago.
Here's a question to just go back to the Nets real fast, because I think we should hit this now. Would you make a rule to play only one of LeVert, Russell, and Dinwiddie?
In one lineup, I would not play more than one of them, and I wouldn't want to. Do I think it has to be a rule? No. 3, I think, is ridiculous. I'd probably make a rule for 2 and certainly be more inclined towards 1. But that game could have stupid amounts of pace, and I'm not super shocked to see, for example, D'Angelo Russell and Spencer Dinwiddie be the highest scoring guys on the Nets. Like, I think you can get 60 out of Russell and 40 out of Dinwiddie. I'd be many lineups in until I advised doubling up. So I guess it depends how many lineups you're building. If you're building 20 lineups, yeah, just go ahead and say that shouldn't happen. If you're building 150 lineups, no, if you slot in there and you have, 30 naked D'Angelo Russell and 8 naked Spencer Dinwiddie and 4 of them together, that wouldn't cause me any consternation.
Yeah, and Dinwiddie's been shooting a good amount even with Russell having his shot load go up a little bit. He's been shooting 16 times a game other than that last one where, as you mentioned, they got pulled for that wonky rotation with Travion Graham and Jared Dudley and whoever, and Rondé Hollis-Jefferson. Actually, here's a question. Rondé Hollis-Jefferson, somebody floated to me that he might have a day-to-day, and he might get back in the rotation after that showing. You see that at all for Rondé as another cheap guy?
I think it's doable. Last game that he spiked back up to, I want to say it was 17 fantasy points he got in there, and obviously was brilliant in that fourth quarter. I would rather run him in a tournament than Derrick Jones Jr., certainly at that ownership. If Derrick Jones Jr. is the 5th highest owned guy on the slate in what I consider a less than average matchup, I'll try to get lucky with Rondé Hollis-Jefferson at an identical price against the Lakers.
Yeah, okay, that seems fair. Let's go to this game because this one is another one with a pretty high total, and in a night where there aren't really a lot of high totals, I think we got to focus in on the ones that are important. You mentioned Danilo Gallinari, but the rest of the Clippers here are also looking pretty good, a 116.5 total. Cleveland also getting a pretty big boost from Vegas. Who are your favorite guys here? I think Montrezl Harrell's the guy I own the most. I think Landry Shamet also a bit interesting given how bad the Cavs are defending the three-pointer. But who would you want to go with on the Clippers side and also Cleveland?
Yeah, for me it is still Gallo at price. Certainly in any sort of cashy environment, I can certainly see playing Lou Will. I think Lou Will is more likely to score less than 30 and more than 60 than Gallo. He's a little more likely to give you uber mega upside. So I guess it depends how chalky the rest of your lineup is, or whether you want 37 out of Gallo. It's perfectly fine to be like, yeah, that's not enough. And again, trouble getting to Gallo now on DK for me because I would rather in tournaments I would rather play Chris Paul. I would vastly rather play Jonas Valanciunas if I have that second center position open. And it'd be really close. Plus, I'm saving $300 if I play Lou Will and $200 if I play Harrell. So I would have all those guys in tournaments in a pretty tight chunk. It's a nice matchup for Harrell and Lou and Gallo. So all those guys rank at their DK prices pretty close to me. I would have some Ivica Zubac. I'm interested to see if we've gotten any news or specific information as to Tristan Thompson. Are the minutes going to come up? Because if they say he's limited to 24 minutes today, it would get pretty interesting on FanDuel. Where he's 4,300 DK, he's like 5.5. Don't think you're going there under any circumstances, especially in the world of Mitch. But FanDuel 43, I think, is the number. If they say Tristan Thompson will be limited to 25 minutes tonight, Well, that's kind of cute. Center there is a lot tougher outside of J-Val and Jokic, so anything kind of cheaper, I'd have some interest.
Rinpack asking a question here about the 4.8K price point for utility on DK. He wants to know whether you go Robinson, Plumlee, or Kevin Knox, who got 47 minutes last game, and Noah Vonleh out again.
Yeah, that was pretty weird. He literally sat like a minute 15. He played like 46-45 in that game.
Bizarre game.
Which I don't even. The coach at Fizzy had just complained that he was experiencing fatigue too. Like, I'm not shitting you. In the pregame of that game, Fizdale said, "Yeah, I think Knox is dealing with some fatigue," and then proceeded to sit him for 75 seconds.
That's how you throw him off the scent.
I don't even. It might have been the post game of the game before, but he literally just said it. I like all those guys that he listed. I will like Knox the least. I don't think you get that many minutes again. I'm going to throw out a guess that you don't get 46 minutes and whatever the hell again. I like Plumlee probably the most of those guys. Again, I kind of like many of the guys in the second unit for the big Nugs here. They're playing the Knicks. They should crush the Knicks. It's a fine fantasy matchup to begin with. You're looking at potentially extra time in a blowout, and they are the only team on the back end of a back-to-back. Worth pointing out the other two teams, the Heat and the Grizzlies, play again tomorrow, which for the Heat, I don't really want to be playing a lot of Heat anyway, so meh. But for the Grizzlies, keep that in mind. It is yet another reason for you to see 8 guys play 20 to 27 minutes tonight. Don't say I didn't tell you.
K-Shep Killicam asking a guy who we've debated in recent weeks, Derrick White, for a FanDuel GPP, would you think he gets the minutes to guard Harden?
Well, let's see. They played 3 times earlier this year. They were all, I believe, in the year 2018 calendar. I recall White guarding him. It's not the craziest idea I've heard. He's on the very border of playable in tournaments for me, mostly just because there are many other mid-range point guards on FanDuel who I like a lot. As I previously mentioned, I like the matchup quite a bit for DJ Augustine, who is still proportionally much cheaper on FanDuel than he really should be. So he's 56. Moutier, obviously I'm not as secure because Frankie Smokes is back there, and you still have Kadeem Allen hanging around. Both those guys are there, so now we can't be quite as sure that he's going to throw out 35 minutes, but Jean-Baptiste Emmanuel Moutier-Zorg is in there doing his thing at 52, so 56 for Derrick White, and Fred VanVleet is 56, so I get where you're going. I think your thought and Dinwiddie's 55. I didn't even think about that one. So yeah, I would have trouble getting to him. If I was building 150 FanDuel lineups, I would have a few shares. I think your thought process is decent. And the reason I get to it is they want to play him a lot of minutes. Now, they want to win games more than they want to do that. So when it's just not going that well, and they're going super big, which they've done a couple times, or just that Patty Mills is shooting really well, or for various reasons, they will yank him out to win a game. But their first inclination is to do everything possible to win those games, but they'd like him to play 30 minutes, and they'd like to do both those things if possible.
All right. Yeah, and I think, too, the fact that he got his minutes cut last game for Patty Mills, I think he's going to come back with a little more motivation. So I don't mind him a little bit.
He's had his minutes cut in several games in a row. If it was one game, then I would assume it is a blip. But if it
was really bad. He was under 20 last game.
Yeah, if you go 12 to 7 games ago, he played 29, 29, 35, 29, 28, 32. Last 4 games, 20, 25, 27, 19. So literally those last 4 games were all less than the 7 preceding them. So it's not just, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I have some concern there. That also, and then you're measuring his upside versus Dinwiddie against the Lakers. He's got Houston, this is a really slow, plodding game. They've played 3 times this year. Once Houston crushed them and put up like 135. The other 2 games were like 90 to 95. So not only, I guess my point is, you need the game to not be shit. You need him to actually get the minutes, and then you need him to be productive. So you're asking a lot there, especially when he's in the price range with guys I think are really nicely priced with Augustine, VanVleet, Dinwiddie, Moutier. So For that reason, I'd have to be pretty deep down the rabbit hole until I got to Derrick White.
Also, just came through. Rudy Gay will be starting ahead of Pirtle officially. Would that make you any more interested in Rudy Gay?
Yeah. Rudy Gay in the, I'm going to say 4 games since he returned from his most recent injury has actually looked really good to me. I am, again, they are not on any form of a back-to-back. I presumed he looks good. I don't know how to put it though. I will pull up random Rudy Gay game log, but it would not shock me if he's actually slightly outperforming his season averages. He's $6,000 on FanDuel, where small forward is a giant kick in the nuts. He's at 4 games since he returned from injury. Against the Knicks, so take it with a grain of salt, but 18 minutes and 25 fantasy points. Against Portland, 23 minutes, 23 fantasy points. Against Golden State, 27 minutes, 31 fantasy points. And against Miami, so 3 of these really tough matchups in a row. Portland, Golden State, Miami, none of those are fun. Last game against Miami, 31 minutes, 39 fantasy points. At what I presume will remain single-digit ownership due to what seems like some unwarranted insecurity with his role. I would have quite a bit, especially on FanDuel, of interest in Rudy.
All right, any notes you want to hit on before we take some of the people's questions?
I don't know. That was really good. We got through like almost all the guys I really like.
It was like it was a confusing path to it, but we really did get everything.
I did my stream of consciousness through 4 games in like 3 minutes at one point.
Maybe Denver? Any thoughts on Denver?
I mean, back end of a back-to-back, travel in New York, and should crush them. I'm obviously concerned about the minutes. I don't have an issue with any of their starting 5 plus Plumlee in tournaments. But that's my largest concern with Jokic. I still slightly prefer Jokic to Vooch. I have them both, points per dollar, well behind Valanciunas. But Rudy Gay, let me see what it costs on DraftKings, because 54 on DraftKings, that is somewhat appealing for me. The matchup is not that great, but if I had to guess on him right now, I'd have like 32 minutes, 28 fantasy points, 20, maybe 30 fantasy points. The matchup is pretty bad, so he'd be a little less than a point a minute guy for me, but there's real upside there. He would not be in my first lineup, but if I'm building 150, I'd have like 10 Rudy.
So some news coming in, and I'll give credit to both El Negro Loco and K-Shep Killocam. 2 guys who are on the news ball in the premium Slack. Giannis, now a game time decision. How would you approach this, given the fact that we've seen a ton of value come out when Giannis has been out? Let's see. That is the appropriate response. Just do that and don't even worry about it.
9 minutes. Okay. All right. George Hill and Sterling Brown are back. So we are just missing Brogdon and Mirotic on this team now, I think. While the matchup is still not brilliant, but with that news hitting at 6:49 approximately, yes, I would start to find ways to slam in some Bledsoe and some Middleton as the 2 most obvious suspects. It is, again, a pretty difficult spot, but their ownership previously should have been pretty damn muted, and at least one of them is going to have, I think you can presume, a very good game here. So on everyone's price came up everyone. DK, they went from 65 and 67, they went up $800 and $600 respectively. So you have Bledsoe at 71, Middleton at 75. Bledsoe at 71 would be my favorite of those guys. I would still have him behind Valanciunas, behind Pascal Siakam. I would now have him slightly ahead of Chris Paul and Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell and Danilo Gallinari. That's about where they would slot in for me right now.
All right. Let's see. What other questions do we have? Favorite forward 5,200 and under on DK?
I don't think you can play... No, you can't play him there. Let me unselect just the Bucks, which was giving me a somewhat truncated list of cheap forwards. God, it might really be Terrence Ross.
Oh boy, always fun playing Terrence. The human whack-a-mole is what I've been calling him in videos. Terrence Ross.
I think I would play Terrence Ross. I really think the ownership on those guys is lower than it should be. This is a Memphis team that is worse defensively, playing faster. Yeah, I would play Terrence Ross.
Let's see.
5,200 and under, I mean, that's where I would land on that.
On FanDuel, would you go Westbrook and Rob or Van Vliet and Siakam?
It's also worth mentioning. I want to go back to the Bucks situation. That
Okay.
it's worth mentioning that now I think like Ersan drop plays and Wilson drop plays on FanDuel make a ton of sense. I would probably now have them both over. I got to see what everyone's price is everywhere. I didn't. Again, this was an ugly game, so not one I spent a lot of time looking at. Ersan at $4,000 on FanDuel. Mr. Wilson at $3,900 there, but if you had the $200 or $300 to spare, I would prefer them to Avon Rob. Wilson $39 on DK, reasonable in a tournament on a wing and a prayer. I would still prefer Ersan at $3,700 if you were going to go with those guys. So
on FanDuel, Westbrook and Rob or Van Vliet and Siakam?
That's interesting. On FanDuel, Van Vliet and Siakam.
Would you go Dinwiddie and Jokic or Fred Van Vliet and Vucevic for FanDuel cash?
Say that one more time, please.
It was Fred Van Vliet. Oh, excuse me. Wait, I skipped past. Oh, Dinwiddie and Jokic or Fred Van Vliet and Vucevic for cash on FanDuel?
I'd go with Fred Van Vliet and Vucevic for cash.
Thoughts on coming in low on the studs tonight with all the value and going more balanced?
I think it's fine. I just discussed very in depth the price range of 6,600 to 7,200 on DK, and there's 7 plays in there I really like. Now you probably only want to play 4 of them because 3 of them were Clippers, but yeah, I think that's absolutely fine. I have no issue if you. I mean, I have no issue if Westbrook's price has come up. It is not a great matchup with Toronto. I do think they are, especially with Lowry out, most likely to be penetrated from the backcourt as opposed to from the side or down low. But he is fadeable. Obviously, we've talked about the things that could go wrong with the Nuggets, so Jokic is fadeable. When we talked about Vooch is hardly, etched in stone, so that's fadeable. So there's no super expensive guys you have to get to. So I think a lineup of, Valanciunas, Siakam, Bledsoe, we'll say at this point, so on and so forth is pretty compelling on DraftKings. So yeah, I like a balanced lineup just fine.
What do you say Harden on FanDuel's in play? Is that 2 games over 88 or 88 or 87 fantasy points out of the last 4?
Well, that's one of those. There is no Gordon. One of those. Is he in play? Of course he's in play. He's James Harden. He's still my projected highest scoring player on the slate. So he's in play. I don't think in one lineup he is my optimal play, but I'm guessing he's owned 15, 18, 20%. If he's owned 9%, then I would legit like him and would push towards that.
Okay. Would you go Augustine, Dragic, Van Vliet, or Derrick White on FanDuel?
I would play Van Vliet in cash and Augustine in tournaments.
How about Van Vliet? Actually, Van Vliet, Augustine, or Dinwiddie on FanDuel?
I would play Van Vliet in cash and Augustine in tournaments. I'd slightly prefer that to Dinwiddie, especially if you don't have D'Angelo Russell as one of your 2 shooting guards. It would be very close for me between Dinwiddie and Augustine. I might actually prefer Dinwiddie, but very close between those 2 guys. I would still play Van Vliet in cash.
Jay Lindell asking a question, which I think you sort of answered earlier, but I feel like people tuning in may need to know it again. Would you limit the amount of Memphis guys to 2 or 3?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, if you on DK, as I think I did in my last build, have Delon Wright, Tyler Dorsey, and Jonas Valanciunas, that's fine. But yes, it's a legitimately shit matchup, and I really am concerned that the minutes just get middled up and down that roster. So yes, I very much so do not want to have gigantor Memphis stack of unskilled players. It does not surprise me if Justin Holiday or Caboclo or Tyler Dorsey or Avon Robb get there. Maybe 2. 3 of those guys, really evening that out so they all get 30 or something, I consider extremely unlikely. So, yeah, in one lineup, I would put some pretty decent caps on it.
Would you go Kuzma, Harrell, Millsap, and Gallo all at a similar price on DK? Who would be your favorite? Oops, I misread that.
Yeah. I like all those guys, assuming you have Jokic. Millsap would be out. Otherwise, I think he ranks in there just with those other guys. I would slightly prefer for matchup and consistency Gallinari and Cash. The other three rank really, really close for me. I will slightly throw my spoon down on Kuzma with very little confidence. I really like all three of those others. Go with your gut. Try to stack up on one game a little bit more. So depending who else is in my lineup would answer that decision. I'll put it that way.
How about a forward at 4,400 on DK?
Let's see. I don't hate Urson at 37. You want to get a little crazy in your life? Oh, it's Mason Plumlee. That was easy.
Oh, yeah.
By a significant margin. Pat Connaughton, not dreadful now at 4,300 either, but it's Mason Plumlee for me pretty easily at that point.
For FanDuel Cash, would you go Dinwiddie, Harden, and Kawhi, or Pat, Bev, D. Russ, and Giannis?
Well, the first one, not terribly close.
I think that was pre-Giannis news. Yes, it was. So that's affected a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Brook Lopez has been strong for 7 of his last 8 games. The bad one was against Miami. Anything to read into with that?
Not a ton to read into other than Miami is a quality defense, and players of all positions will frequently struggle to have productive fantasy days against them. But I'm not. It's not a good spot for Brook Lopez, but he's always got enough tournament upside that I have no issue should he find his way into your lineup. But it's not a beyond that any additional analysis I can think of. No.
Yeah, and also that game is with Giannis, so the difference is also that he hasn't had Giannis.
Yeah.
DK Cash, Russ and Siakam, or Paul George and D. Russ?
Russ or Russ? I get very confused. Is one of those D'Angelo?
Russell Westbrook and Siakam, or Paul George and D'Angelo Russell?
The first one by a mile.
Any game that... No, that's not a great question. On DK, Pat Connaughton or Plumlee for a DK GPP?
Plumlee, not close.
All right, we're locked now. Now that we're locked, this question can be answered. Any game that needs to be in your lineup tonight?
Yeah, having no one from the Nets and Brooklyn, from the Nets and the Lakers is probably wrong. I think if I built a lineup and I had no Lakers and no Nets, it's unlikely that someone in a game of that pace isn't going to get there. But beyond that, it would feel a little weird to have no one on Memphis, but I don't despise it, just because of the popularity. The 3 players that I would be most inclined towards are going to be incredibly highly owned. So, and again, the matchup is pretty brutal. So, no, I could see getting away from it after that.
All right, we got all the questions that were pending right now. So if you want to do a fast Daddy likes, so you can go take care of whatever work stuff.
I believe it is just it's the one game, but it is the one game. So yeah, we'll look at it real quick. And then
you're going to love all the Memphis guys, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's going to be...
70% Tyler Dorsey is going to be a blast.
I'm kind of curious where that number comes in. If you're curious, by the way, between Dorsey, Valanciunas, and Delon Wright are all in a 6.5% bubble. It's just because the first lineup I collect on has them all. Dorsey, 41. Delon, 47. Jonas, 44. His name is Jonas. He's carrying the wheel. Let me... load this up. Yeah, so unsurprisingly, those 3 guys. Then all the way down to Bruno Caboclo, 13.5.
Ooh, okay. So with that one we were right on, but yeah, the others a little heavy on Tyler Dorsey. 40% Dorsey, I don't hate. I'd still go under that, but
yeah, that's about what I said about 45 was what I thought was the sweet spot. 12% Justin Holiday, 13.5% Caboclo. I would prefer Caboclo there. Look, Holiday could, in this spot, get a pile of shots and start making them all, but he's been, again, desperately not involved in the offense on this team, and the matchup is rough. So I would rather go with Caboclo. He's just more likely to give me some secondary stats, maybe get a low-end double-double or something. Holiday needs to make shots to get value, and it seems unlikely he'll get them here. Nikola Vucevic, 11%. I like it at 11%. That's good. I'd want more than that. Rob, 10.5%. Same theory as Caboclo. I'd rather go there than Holiday. Chandler Parsons, 9.6. Sure, with him there's a more strict minutes cap, which makes you a little concerned. Aaron Gordon 3.3, I like that. DJ Augustine 2.4, I love that. Evan Fournier 2.3, I like that. Javon Carter 1%, I like that. Terrence Ross, by the way, my friend to whom I recommended 0.95%, I would like that.
Ooh. That's the most fun Terrence Ross, where he can bomb out, but if he gets you a day, one of those 40-point days.
I like the spot. Tweet me later, either in anger or exultation. Michael Carter Williams, Rookie of the Year, 0.46%. Looking at a blowout, I can sort of stomach that. Wes Iwundu 0.24, Kem Birch 0.18, Yuta Watanabe 0.07, Joakim Noah 0.04%. Congratulations, you've played yourself.
Oh, shameful to do that, but Joakim Noah, at least a good guy to go down with the ship with. All right, Eddie, what's your weekend schedule for shows?
I am going to be off Sunday. I will be on Saturday night. I am probably traveling on business, actually, related to Chicago this weekend. We'll meet up with a couple of friends there. So I imagine I will miss Sunday, but Saturday I'll be there, 7 o'clock, and Monday I shall return for a somewhat anemic 4-game slate. But I shall be there.
All right, so keep your eyes peeled for Eddie this weekend. Tomorrow, I'll be back on Tuesday. Well, whatever. We'll be seeing you next week. That's all that matters. Thank you guys for watching. Good luck. Have a great weekend, and we will see you again soon.